Tyler. Thank you, Justin. Good to see Justin back. He looks a little more limber than he did the last time he was here, recovering from his accident. Yes? Yeah, feeling better. Feeling better. That's good. Remember that blessing we gave here? Were you here the day we gave that blessing?
Yeah, Paul.
Well, you know, we like to think we heal, but it has nothing to do with us. We do that best when we get out of the way. When we get out of the way and let the love to flow. That's really what it's about. That's what we're here to learn, really, is how to move out of the way. And what I'm going to talk about today is a perfect example of that. This idea of holding nothing back. Is holding nothing back. It really means that it is about becoming all you're here to be. That's what it means, holding nothing back. Letting no obstacle get in the way, to have full awareness of life the way it is, to be a conscious collaborator and a conscious participant, a joyful participant in your own life. That's what it means to hold nothing back. I mean, nothing. There is nothing impossible. You'll do whatever it takes to be authentic and genuinely you. Doesn't that sound great? Here's what Mark Nepo says about holding back and what was the inspiration for the title of this series. He said, this holding back thing centers on the perpetual risk to break and reframe our ways of seeing and believing, seeing and being in the world. It's the risk we take to break and reframe the way we see and the way we are in the world. Here's another quote. Holding nothing back perceptually means expanding how we see. Expanding how we see. Because we think we see what we see. But it's really only because we are who we are with our limitations and our narrow, sometimes, view. So that's what holding nothing back is. It involves the perpetual risk to know God in each moment by putting down all agendas, stories, and worn-out beliefs. That's what it is. It's taking the risk to release the stuff that some of us have been carrying around for a long time, the stories where we're comfortable. Did you see the thing on Facebook that Jess posted? Here's your comfort zone, and here's where the magic happens. Did you see that? Here's the comfort zone, and here's where the magic happens. They're not even connected. They're not even connected. So it tells us where we really need to be if we want to be in the magic. Who wants to be in the magic? I do. We've got to break out of the comfort zone. Because you know what? We carry stuff. Sometimes we carry a lot of stuff. And I mean, we carry a lot of stuff. We may look unencumbered and light. We may flit around the world as if we're a butterfly and that we're not carrying anything. But I'm telling you, my friends, and you know this, we are weighted down. We are weighted down emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. Maybe not every moment of the day, but we're weighted down by what we carry. By what we carry, we're weighted down. We talk about it this way. We talk about each other saying, oh yeah, everybody's carrying their baggage. You know, everybody carries their baggage around. It's just the result of being human. We have these experiences and we have this baggage we're carrying around. You know how it is. Sometimes it's a lot of baggage. Sometimes it's bag after bag after bag. Sometimes it's a whole bunch of baggage. Sometimes it's more than we can really carry and we have to make a couple trips to carry the baggage we're carrying. It's a lot to carry. It's a lot to carry. But I'll point out, maybe the obvious, that we weren't born with all that baggage. We weren't born with it. We accumulated it. We decided to tote it around. We decided to pick it up. You think about how you feel when you look at a newborn baby. We talk about newborns as being so innocent. They're so close to the love that they came from, that there's none of this. There's absolutely none of this. They're so light. They're so joyful. We were that once. I don't remember that about my infancy. But that's the way I was. I didn't have any of this baggage. I decided to carry it around. I decided I was going to tote it around. It's not really who I am or what I am. It's just what I decided to tote around. The good news is that since we decided to carry it around, we can decide to unload it. We don't have to carry it. We don't have to decide to tote the same bags around everywhere. I like that when I was preparing this lesson, I was thinking about the people in the airports, like, I'm taking this for my week trip to Peru, let's say. And I see somebody else going to Peru, and they have a whole sled of stuff. And I'm thinking, all I need is this right here. Feeling kind of smug in my need to have less, right? But maybe they're moving there. You know, I make up my own story about that. But that's the visual I have. But to lighten the load is to feel less overwhelmed. Really. If you look at the card you got today, the antidote to feeling overwhelmed is to let it go, to let go of the baggage. Because here's the truth. What has happened, what is happening, and what might happen is not what's overwhelming. What you have done, what you are doing, or what you might do is not what's overwhelming. What makes it feel overwhelming is carrying this behind it. That's what makes it feel overwhelming. Not the thing itself. The thing itself is not overwhelming. It's what we carry with us that makes it feel that way. The baggage that we carry that I'm talking about is not this external baggage. This is just a nice little prop. Renee and I are leaving for Maine in a few days, so we don't have to put the suitcases back. So it's an easy prop to have. But this baggage that I'm talking about is baggage that we carry in our mind and our heart. It's the baggage we carry inside of us, not outside of us. This is just an illustration of what it could be. But the baggage we carry inside our hearts and our minds are the stories that we've crammed in there and the beliefs that we've crammed in there that don't serve us, that take us in the opposite direction, the things we've learned. And they're things like guilt, blame, judgment. And I want to put them all under this umbrella as I talk about it today, all falling under the umbrella of unforgiveness. Because we have some unforgiveness in our minds and in our hearts. Maybe you've released some of it. All right. But there's still some left. All right? There's still some left. And you know what I'm talking about. In our mind and our heart, we carry unforgiveness of other people. We don't like what they did to us, how they treat us, what they think about us, how they talk to us. It could be a family member, it could be a friend, a co-worker, somebody you just ran into in the street that said you were fat, you know, and you just hold that against them. There are whole groups of people. It's they and them, they're the ones. And we think that by holding anger in our heart and judgment in our minds, that somehow we're going to make them pay. And we hold that, we give them the cold shoulder, we decide not to talk to them, we withhold our love from them, and we think that's going to make them pay. We think that's how we're going to get revenge. We hold that unforgiveness and it affects us. We hold unforgiveness in our hearts and our minds about our own self too, by the way. And this is the way I think it's most understandable. It's any time that we think of ourselves as not enough. Not good enough, not smart enough, not pretty enough, not young enough, not good enough in any way. You know, when I was writing that, it reminded me of a story of my dad told me one time. And he was in the hospital with his father, who was dying. He was an alcoholic, and he was dying from complications of cirrhosis of the liver. And my dad told me the story. I never talked to him about it again, but I remember clearly him telling me, or maybe I was in a group where he was telling somebody else, how when he was with his dad, as his dad was near death, he told him this. He said, "Tony, you're no good, and you'll never be any good." And I was wondering today how that affected my dad. You know, how did he carry that lie with him his life? I wonder if he did. I never asked him about it again. Today I'm thinking I would have loved to. You know, he passed away a year ago. But I'm wondering why we believe those lies people tell us. That you're not good enough. That you don't deserve it. That somehow you're less than. And I felt bad in my heart about thinking how my dad might have carried that with him for a good part of his life. Can you feel the weight of that baggage? It's heavy. It's some heavy stuff. But I'm here to tell you, we can let it go. It's possible to let it go. This unforgiveness that we carry toward ourselves and toward other people, it's possible to let this baggage go. Let me tell you, the opposite of unforgiveness is not forgiveness, it's freedom. The opposite of unforgiveness is freedom. It's joy. It's ease. The process is forgiveness. The process is forgiveness. It's an important distinction to make. It's an important distinction to make. So I want to read to you from the book of Joy about forgiveness. And I think I want us to understand that the practice of forgiveness is really about holding nothing back. You have to really be willing to not let anything stand in your way of this practice, of anything to stand in your way of obtaining freedom for yourself. That's really what it's about. Let me read this from the book of Joy, which is a book, the conversation between the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu. Great book, by the way. The Archbishop says this about forgiveness. He says, forgiveness is the only way to heal ourselves and be free from the past. Without forgiveness, listen to this, we remain tethered to the person who harmed us. We are bound to the chains of bitterness, tied together and trapped. You see, we don't look at unforgiveness that way sometimes. But that's what happens. We tie ourselves. We keep it alive in us. We do that. Until we can forgive the person who harmed us or ourselves, that person or our old self will hold the keys to our happiness. That person or even ourselves will be our jailer. When we forgive, we take back control of our own fate and our own feelings, and we become our own liberator. We become our own liberator. That's how it works. That's how it works. So I'll ask you, when you think about an unforgiveness you're holding, what is the story you're telling yourself about that? Does it bring you joy? Does it motivate you? Does it inspire you? Are you happy about it? If not, maybe you want to change. Maybe it's time to let it go. Maybe you need to maybe that's what will bring you to the point of being willing to let it go. Because if the story's not serving you, why would you keep it in your mind and heart? Why would you keep that belief in your mind and heart? What's the point? Are you willing? You know, here's the thing about forgiveness too. It's not about letting anybody off the hook. It's not about saying the behavior was okay. For my dad, for instance, to forgive his dad wouldn't mean to say what he said to him was perfectly fine. It's just the fact that he would decide, even in the pain, to decide not to carry it with him for the rest of his life. To not make it, the baggage is not him. The baggage is not me. The baggage is not you. But sometimes it hurts what other people do. Sometimes it's painful. And forgiveness is also not about pretending it's not painful. That's not what it's about. About 5 years ago, we lost our cat. Renee and I lost our cat, Sam. And Sam had been sick for a while. He was diabetic. He had things going on, and he had a surgery at the vet's office. And our vet and I, we were very close to our vet, and she said, listen, I'm going to do this surgery on Friday. I'm going to take Sam home, and I'm going to be with him every minute over the weekend while I take care of him. We thought, oh, that will be great, right? So she took him home, and on Saturday morning we got a call from our vet to tell us that Sam was gone, that he didn't make it, that he had died. And of course we were devastated. Anybody who has a pet knows when a pet is gone, it's very difficult to let them go. And it was very difficult for Renee to know that Sam left and we weren't there with him. We weren't there with him, and it was really hard. And we were doing some forgiveness work at the time, and she was doing some meditations. And one morning, she told me this story later. She sat in meditation because she wanted to forgive the vet for not letting us to be the ones to be with her, to be with Sam. See the stories we make up? You know, that's her fault because she did this, and here she was taking care of our animal, but Renee was just upset that we weren't there. And so she sat in meditation one morning, trying to forgive our vet. And she was in meditation, and she was picturing her and trying to say, I forgive you, I forgive you. No, it wasn't working. It wasn't working one bit. She said it wasn't working. There was just all this resistance until she finally gave in and decided to feel everything she was feeling. The pain, the disappointment, the sadness, and she was weeping. Tears were rolling down her face until, in that moment of release or grace or God, it was gone. It was gone. The angst, the sadness of not being able to be there with Sam was released in that moment. Let me read you this from Imelda Shanklin. If others offend us, the forgiveness due the situation is not to be exercised toward the offenders, but toward ourselves for having expected of human nature what we can only find in divine nature. When it's painful, come into that moment. Sit with that pain. It's okay. And by the grace of God, by the grace of friendship or a counselor, it can be released. We can get rid of another big piece of baggage. We can move it out of the way. It's possible to do that. It's possible to do that. But forgiveness is not passive. It's not something that just happens. You might have noticed in that story. It takes courage and strength. It actually takes spiritual maturity to be able to release, to realize that it's not serving me. And in the fact, it's nothing about the other person. It's about what I'm willing to tote around. Let me read you this. Here's what the Dalai Lama said in this chapter on forgiveness. He said, so it is totally wrong, and he said this emphatically, cutting his hand sharply through the air, to say that the practice of tolerance and the practice of forgiveness are signs of weakness. Totally wrong. 100% wrong. 1000% wrong. Forgiveness is a sign of strength, isn't it? He says to the Archbishop, and the Archbishop says this, absolutely yes. I was just going to say that those who say forgiving is a sign of weakness haven't tried it. Those who have decided it's easy haven't really tried it. It takes courage and strength. Let's just acknowledge that about forgiveness. Let's just acknowledge that. But there's one more aspect of this that I want to share with you, and that is even a more spiritual aspect than the personal freedom that we gain when we decide to practice forgiveness. More than just the personal joy that we can have when we get rid of the stuff, the baggage that we're carrying around. A more spiritual thing, if you can imagine. Let me read you this story. Now, Desmond Tutu was in South Africa during apartheid. And after that, there was what was called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And during that time, he said, we had mothers of some young people who had been lured by those working with the apartheid system into a booby trap where they were killed. One of the mothers said she switched on her television set and saw the body of her son being dragged. And apart from her anguish at the death of her son, there was a deep, deep anger at his body being treated as if it were the carcass of an animal. So they had this Truth and Reconciliation Commission where these mothers came face to face with the perpetrators. And the one who betrayed these young people who were killed came and appeared in front of these mothers to ask for forgiveness. When the mother of the young man who had been dragged through the street saw the traitor, she took her shoe off and threw it at him. He said, we had to adjourn for a little while. But something fantastic happened during a break. That in this group of mothers, the one who was speaking on their behalf got up and went across the room to this guy who had been responsible for killing their sons and embraced him and said, my child, we forgive you. Can you imagine the energy in that moment, in that room? The power that these women had to say they forgave, to release someone from something awful that they did. You see, no one is incapable of forgiving, and no one is unforgivable. That's really the truth. There's one more story I want to share because this is so powerful, this spiritual power we have when we are willing to go beyond the personal power, the personal joy of being free from our own unforgiveness to share with others. If I can find it. So this is from the book that I'm using for this series called Living Originally, the 10 Spiritual Practices to Transform Your Life. And Robert Brumet talks about a movie he saw about back in 1986 called The Mission. And this is part of the story of what happened in this movie. He said one day this let me see here. One day, this guy named Mendoza discovers that his fiancée and his younger brother Felipe in bed together. Yikes. He challenges his brother Felipe to a duel and he kills him. And although he was acquitted of killing by the Spanish governor, Mendoza spirals into depression and guilt. Father Gabriel visits him and challenges Mendoza to undertake a suitable penance to expiate his guilt. Mendoza chooses his penance and accompanies the Jesuits on their return journey above these falls, these very high falls. And his self-chosen penance is to pull a large bundle of heavy metal objects over and over again up the steep cliffs on the side of the falls. And he would do this until he felt free from his guilt. That was his self-chosen penance. After pulling the load up the mountain many, many times, he still didn't feel forgiven. One time, as he crawled to the top of the steep cliffs, ropes and metal dangling from his exhausted body, he encountered one of the tribesmen that his brother was a part of, waiting for him. He was certain that he was going to be killed because of the many crimes that he had against the tribesmen. But that tribesman grabs his machete and with a scowl he raises it high over his head. Knowing that death is imminent, Mendoza lowers his head in anticipation of the fatal strike with the machete, and it comes down with a heavy thwack. The next scene shows the large bundle of metal objects rolling down the side of the cliff. The tribesman cut not his neck, but the rope that bound him to all these metal objects. That's the power we have. That's the power that these mothers exerted. That's the power that this tribesman, the power of forgiveness to others, to articulating it, what you feel in your heart, is already done. I'm calling it a spiritual power. Not all of us have it. Some of us choose to hold on to the baggage, to keep it alive. It's too important to die. It's too important to let it go. We decide to hold on to it. But there are those who decide otherwise. And there are those who decide to share that forgiveness in a way to lift not only themselves, but to the perpetrator as well. I want to carry only what I need. And what I need is not unforgiveness. What I want to carry is love. What I want to carry is freedom. What I want to carry is joy. And if it takes taking that machete and letting loose the burden that somebody carries in response to a condition that I've helped create, then I'm ready to do it. Because it creates in me the love that's required to heal not only myself, but the world. So let's take those ideas into meditation today. I invite you to take a deep breath and Consider what it is that you're holding in that place of unforgiveness. Let it be there. Feel what it feels like, if it's hurtful, if it's painful. Experience what it is. And let the divine in you, let the presence of God that exists right in you, the grace, the peace that is that, remove it for you. And breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. Bringing ourselves to this present moment. Acknowledging the baggage we might bring with it. Gently asking ourselves, am I willing to let it go? Am I willing to let it go? come to you, for I am unsettled with feelings and thoughts that overwhelm me. I turn to you to come to a deeper knowing of myself so that I may wash away that which creates such anguish and discontent within me. Guide me so I may quiet my mind and calm my spirit, so I may unleash my restless soul and release this pain into an ocean of healing tears. Help me forgive, mourn, and grieve. Help me release the disappointments, the heartaches, the insecurities that have stirred such emotions in my soul. Deliver me to the light that resides within me, so my mind can rest, so my heart can beat with the peaceful rhythm of your love. Help me remember that I am worthy, that I can be happy and at peace, that I can love myself, for I am of love, for I am of you.